It started like a normal day. The sky was blue. Cars moved through traffic. People laughed, worked, and scrolled through their phones. No one knew it would be the last normal morning Earth would ever see Dot at exactly 11:04 a.m. The clouds disappeared. Not slowly, not with wind. They just vanished like someone wiped the sky clean. Then a shadow fell. Huge black shapes blocked the sun. Silent, cold. Not planes. Not balloons. Not anything anyone had seen before. They were ships. Massive ships. Bigger than stadiums? Dozens of them. Hundreds. Floating in the sky like they didn't care about gravity. No sound. No warning. No message. People looked up from streets, rooftops, and windows. Phones came out. News channels tried to broadcast. Some thought it was a stunt. Some thought it was war. Some prayed Dot, then all the satellites went dark. TVs stopped working. GPS died. Internet failed. Within minutes, the entire world was offline. Planes fell from the sky. Some crashed into buildings. Some vanished without a trace. Military jets scrambled. Countries sent out warnings. But the ships didn't fire a single shot. Instead, a strange energy pulse spread across the earth. Invisible, but powerful. It hit every base, every tank, every ship. Within 3 hours, most of the world's weapons were useless. Dead metal Dot the governments tried to fight. But how do you fight an enemy that doesn't speak, that doesn't answer, that doesn't even see you as a threat? By the end of the first day, most cities had gone silent, not destroyed, just quiet. Streets were empty, buildings untouched. But the people were gone. Dot. No one knew where Dot by the third day. Earth had fallen. The ships floated. Above the major cities, strange machines crawled the streets. They didn't shoot unless someone moved. They scanned everything, humans, animals, even dirt Dot survivors hidden the countryside. Forests, basements, anywhere they could. They whispered. They cried. But most of all, they waited. They waited for the monsters to speak. But the monsters never said a word. They didn't come to rule. They came to control. But control is not the same as peace. Dot far from the cities. Deep in the mountains, a small group of humans sat inside a cave. Dirty, hungry, afraid. There were no soldiers among them. Just people, a mother, an old man, a teenager. A man with a broken arm. Dot. No one spoke for a while. Then the teenager finally asked, "Is it over?" The old man shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "It's just begun." The woman looked at him. "What do you mean?" He looked out toward the sky, where a faint dark shadow still floated. "They think they've won. They think we're finished." The teenager clenched his fists. "Aren't we?" "No," the old man said firmly. They forgot one thing about humans. Everyone turned to look at him. "We don't stop just because we're beaten," he said. "We get angry. We survive. We learn." The man with the broken arm smiled through the pain. "We adapt." Outside the cave, the air was cold, too cold for summer. The sky was darker than it should be, like the sun was struggling to shine. The machines scanned the forest now, but they were slower here. The deeper the humans hid, the less the machines could track. Somewhere far away, an alien ship floated above a dead city. Inside it, tall, shadowy creatures moved silently. They watched screens that showed Earth from space. No more wars. No more noise. No resistance. They believed the job was complete. They were wrong. Because in the darkness, humans were changing. Not their bodies. Their minds. Fear turned into silence. Silence turned into thought. And thought turned into fire. A fire that no machine could scan. A fire that couldn't be measured. A fire called rage. Inside the cave. The old man picked up a stone and began to draw on the wall. Circles, lines, arrows. It looked like a child's drawing. But it was more. It was a plan. A map of ruins. Of tunnels. Of paths the machines wouldn't expect. War isn't always about guns, he whispered. Sometimes it's about patience. The teenager looked at the drawing. "What do we do first?" "We survive," the old man said. "Then we watch." Then he looked up at the dark shape in the sky. We strike. Outside, a cold wind blew through the trees. A bird flew across the sky and was instantly scanned by a machine. It flew away fast, too small to care about. Just like the humans, the aliens thought small, weak, broken. But they forgot something important. When you break a human, you don't destroy them, you make them dangerous. Asterisk, the machines moved like shadows through the ruins of the cities. They didn't speak. They didn't stop. They scanned everything with red beams and marked the ground with strange glowing symbols. Where they walked, the air felt colder. Time itself felt slower. The cities didn't burn, but they were dead just the same. Glass stood in windows, but no one looked out. Lights flickered, but no one dared switch them off in one of those ruined cities. Beneath an old factory covered in dust and silence, a group of survivors breathed through cloth masks. The air stank of metal and smoke. Above them, the machines hovered. They didn't know humans were beneath their feet. Not yet. A young woman pressed her ear to a broken pipe. She could hear the low hum of the alien engines. The sound never stopped, like a monster breathing in its sleep. She raised her hand slowly. Everyone went silent. Even the child stopped crying. The machines were close. No one spoke. No one moved. The walls were thin. One wrong sound and the entire group would be found. But the machines moved on. Only when the humming faded did the woman speak. "They're not looking for fighters anymore," she whispered. "They're looking for the ones who haven't broken." Yet, a man in the corner looked up. His beard was thick. His eyes were tired. But his hands were steady as he worked on something hidden under a torn blanket. He pulled it out slowly. It was a small radio. The parts were old, burnt, useless by normal standards, but not to him. He'd spent weeks collecting pieces, wires, batteries, anything left behind. Now, finally, he clicked it on static. Everyone leaned in. More static. Then a voice. Faint, broken, but real. "If you can hear this, you're not alone." The survivors froze. The man adjusted the signal, holding his breath. The voice returned, louder now. They conquered the cities. They shut down the skies. But they forgot something. "We are still here." A child whispered. "Who is that?" No one answered. The voice continued. "We have food, water, a safe place. Follow the river north until the broken dam. Listen for the second signal. We are waiting." Then silence. The man turned off the radio quickly. Everyone looked at him. "It's real," he said. "It's not a trap. That's human tech. Human code." Someone asked, "Do we go?" No one answered. Fear wrapped around their minds like chains. The roads were watched. Drones flew day and night. The last family who tried to escape never came back. But something had changed. A voice. A signal. Proof that others were still alive. That night they made a decision. They would move. Slowly. Carefully. One by one. They would reach the broken dam. But in the shadows above, something else was watching. In the orbit above Earth. A large alien. Ship sat motionless. Inside, the aliens had begun to notice patterns. Survivors were still moving. Signals were bouncing. Short, fast, quiet. They couldn't stop it. Not yet. Something about human tech confused their systems. Something they hadn't expected. Emotion. Human machines were messy. Built with feeling, not logic. And that made them harder to predict. In one of their labs, an alien watched a recording of a human crying. He didn't understand the sound. The creature cried in pain, but also in anger. Then it smiled through the tears. The alien stepped back from the screen. This didn't make sense. It played another file. A human standing over a fallen friend. The human screamed. The scream wasn't fear. It was fury. This, too, made no sense. One scientist wrote a message in its report. They are wounded, but not finished. They feel too much. On Earth, the group of survivors reached the river after 2 long weeks of hiding. 2 were lost along the way. 1 to a drone strike, 1 to illness. But the rest made it, dirt covered, cold, hungry, but alive. They stood at the edge of the river and listened. The water rushed past. The wind howled. Then, in the distance, a sound. A whistle dot twice. Dot then silence. That was the signal. Suddenly, figures stepped out of the trees. Human, dirty, armed, with handmade weapons. One of them nodded. You made it? The leader of the group stared. How many of us are there? The stranger smiled. More than they think. And deep in space, alarms began to go off on the alien ship. Unexplained explosions. Sabotaged. Equipment. Missing patrols. Broken drones found with messages scratched into them. 3 words. Still not broken. And somewhere, in the center of a human camp hidden underground, people were building something. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message. A message no alien could ignore. And when it was ready, the sky would change again. This time, not with silence, but with fire. And every alien watching Earth would remember the one thing they forgot. You don't conquer humans. You only wake them up. The sky had stopped meaning anything. The stars were hidden by the silent watchers above cold ships that never moved, never spoke, never blinked. But now, even those ships were starting to shift. Subtle movements, repositioning, like wolves. Noticing their prey was not lying down to die, but crawling to its feet, teeth bared, eyes burning. Underground. The humans no longer whispered. They planned. Across broken towns and abandoned highways. Survivors were building something new. Not a city, not a base. Something quieter. Something harder to detect. A network got each group thought they were the last. Now they were learning they weren't alone. Smoke signals, flares, scratch marks on stones. Burned symbols in abandoned buildings. All carrying a message. We are still here. And more importantly, we are ready. In the ruins of a forgotten factory. A small group of fighters gathered around a cracked table. The leader, a woman with one eye and hand scarred from fire, held a strange map. It wasn't drawn on paper. It was carved into a broken drone shell. The lines were jagged, raw, and beautiful. It showed a pattern. Alien patrols moved in circles. Always the same. Predictable. And predictable meant vulnerable. She looked at the others and said just 4 words. Tonight, we head back. That same night, across the planet, strange reports began to appear in the alien ship's central system. Missing units. Silence from small patrols. Heat flares and cleared zones. Signals bouncing off dead satellites. The reports were dismissed at first, but the humans didn't stop. They didn't charge in with fire and flags. They moved like wind, like smoke. They struck only when the enemy was blind. They left behind no bodies, only wreckage and messages scratched into steel and stone. We are the noise you can't silence. You took the world. We took the fight. You will never rest. And for the first time since the invasion began, the alien commanders felt it. Fear. They increased patrols, sent larger machines, built new scanners. But none of it worked because the humans had changed. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were learning. In the deep cold of an old subway tunnel, a boy no older than 10 sat beside a makeshift terminal. He tapped keys like he'd been born to do it. Around him were wires, lights, even screens pulled from ancient tech. He wasn't watching cartoons. He was jamming signals. Every time the aliens tried to talk between their units, his software twisted it, delayed it, scrambled it. Not enough to be noticed. Just enough to be deadly. One alien drone flew too far from backup and didn't return. Another took fire from a direction it wasn't expecting. Another received the wrong coordinates and was blown apart by its own allies. A machine empire, undone not by brute force, but by confusion. In a hollowed-out mountain far to the north, a group of engineers tested something for the first time. It wasn't a gun. It wasn't a rocket. It was a sound. A deep, low pulse that made walls tremble. Built from old speakers, broken alien parts, and human music. It traveled underground, bounced through empty buildings, and echoed into the very bones of the enemy. The aliens heard it. Not with ears, but with whatever they used to sense danger, and it was screaming one thing. We are coming. The war was no longer theirs. A machine doesn't know how to hope. A machine doesn't fear death. But it also doesn't understand what happens when a species starts to fight for something bigger than life, for freedom, for memory, for each other. One night, high above Earth, a scout ship picked up a signal from the surface. The message wasn't alien code. It was human, old, weak, but clear. We know you're listening. We know what you did to other worlds. But this is Earth, and we don't break. The ship prepared to respond, but before it could, its systems failed. Power died. Lights blinked. And then, across its entire wall of screens, a single human face appeared distorted. Tired, smiling with blood on his cheek. He whispered one word. Boo. Then the ship exploded from the inside. The other aliens watched in silence. No weapons had been detected. No approach. No warning dot, just asterisk, asterisk, human hands. Somewhere in the dark, asterisk painted in silence. But her hands moved with purpose. Each line was part of a symbol, something ancient, something remembered, something that may be others. Stop and stare. It wasn't just art. It was a message, left for the next group that passed through. She didn't know the name of the shape. But deep inside, she knew what it meant. Hope. Outside. The wind howled. The machines were searching again. Their scans had grown stronger, faster, more invasive. They learned to detect heat signatures behind walls, sound through water, even movement under stone. But still, they couldn't find the fire spreading across the ground, because it wasn't in one place. It was everywhere. Old roads that had once been silent now had traps buried under loose concrete, not bombs noise. Sharp metal and screeching. Alarms that lured machines into the open, where they were met by ropes, nets, fire, or worse, humans who smiled before they attacked. The aliens had studied Earth, its species, its buildings, its weapons. But they hadn't studied rage. In an abandoned airport. A man dragged 2 broken drones to a small hidden chamber. Around him were others, mechanics, kids, old soldiers. They took the drones apart slowly, quietly, learning from every wire, every circuit. The machines that once hunted them were now being used to build something else, their own weapon, not one big enough to destroy the ships. Not yet, but one strong enough to prove a point. They weren't just fighting back. They were learning faster. Then the enemy could handle. And then came the signal. It happened at midnight. Across hundreds of places at once. Camps, tunnels, forests. Ruins. The same message was received, not from a satellite. From Earth, from someone or something hiding. Deep in a place no alien had reached. The signal said just this: strike at dawn, everywhere, at once. Let them feel it. People froze when they heard it. Not out of fear, out of awe. Out of realization, they weren't alone. This wasn't random. Someone, somewhere, was organizing them. A voice of the new resistance. Unknown, invisible, powerful, and it was time. That night, there was no sleep. Fighters painted their faces with dust and ash. Children carried supplies. Elders handed out maps drawn from memory. People sharpened tools, lit torches, checked wires, tied knots. Everyone had a role. Everyone mattered. And when the first light broke the edge of the sky, Earth answered. Explosions ripped through patrol zones. Fires lit the forests where machines once hid. Old city rooftops became sniper nests. Abandoned train stations shook with traps triggered by motion. One by one, alien outposts went dark. They didn't fall in giant battles. They fell in whispers and screams and shadows. In hundreds of different places. Humans struck together as if they were one mind, and in orbit. The alien commanders watched their systems collapse, like dominoes. Reports came in from across the globe. Losses, glitches, silence, panic, spread through their network, not because they were losing a few machines, because they were losing control. In one command ship, a general screamed in its own language, slamming its hand through a screen. It demanded answers. How could this primitive species outthink them? Outmaneuver them? Outlast them? The answer came from one of their own scientists. A whisper, cold and heavy. They don't fight with logic. They fight with purpose. Back on Earth, in the ruins of what used to be a mall, a man stood over it. Captured alien scout, the machine twitched. Its body sparked. It looked up at the human and tried to speak through a static-filled translator. Why? Are you not broken? The human knelt, leaned close, and spoke with fire in his voice. Because you didn't take everything. He stood and walked away, leaving behind a simple message scratched into the alien's metal chest. You forgot what we are. And somewhere deep underground, in the heart of the growing resistance, the hidden voice sent out one more message. It wasn't a plan. It was a promise. You took our skies. Now we'll take your fear. The war had changed. The hunted were now the hunters. And Earth. Earth had begun to awaken as one giant storm. Rain fell hard across the broken lands, but it didn't wash away the fire. Smoke rose from what used to be control towers, alien patrol centers, and supply routes. The ground was scorched. The sky was quiet not from peace, but from something far more dangerous: strategy. For the first time since the invasion, Earth had gone silent on its own terms. The aliens didn't know what to make of it. Their ships hovered in the same dead pattern, scanning, analyzing, updating thousands of predictions per second, but the numbers didn't help. The machines couldn't explain why their strongest units were now failing, why humans struck with no rhythm, no warning, then disappeared like ghosts, why entire zones went dark in a single coordinated sweep without using a single satellite, or open signal. In the mountains, a group of fighters emerged from the mouth of a collapsed tunnel. Their faces were smeared with ash and dirt, their bodies worn thin, but their eyes, those were alive. They had just taken down a drone relay tower, something thought untouchable. They hadn't used missiles. They climbed it, hand over hand, in the freezing wind. In total silence, they used old cables, ancient hacking tools, and the stolen processor from a dead alien scout. At the top, they didn't destroy the tower. They rewired it. And now, for the first time, they could see the enemy's movements in real time. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They got to work. 3 hours later, resistance teams all over the region moved at once, not with panic. With precision, one group hijacked a crawler unit and drove it into a fuel depot. Another lured flying scouts into a canyon full of metal spikes. In the heart of a flooded city, a single non-one arm, half a lung. No formal training planted a signal booster made of wires, battery acid, and pieces of a radio. That small spark connected two camps that hadn't spoken in months. Every act was a message. Every blow was a signal. We are watching now, and we remember everything. The aliens began deploying a new type of hunter drone. Smaller, smarter, faster. These didn't patrol. They stalked. They moved like animals. They hunted in silence. One by one, they entered the ruins. But the ruins weren't empty. They were filled with traps, echo chambers, whooping signals, dead ends. Entire cities had become mazes designed not to keep humans in, but to keep machines lost. One drone unit entered a library thinking it had cornered a group of survivors. It activated its scan, targeting movement behind a row of collapsed shelves. What it found was a speaker, and from it came one human voice, repeating in slow, calm words, "You're not the first to take our world, but you will be the last." Then, the floor gave out, and the whole room went up in fire. Into orbiting command ships. Confusion spread faster than any virus. AI systems tried to make sense of the data, but it no longer followed any recognizable pattern. Alien leaders questioned the logic behind their strategies. Some even began to disagree, an unheard of thing in their history. And while they debated, Earth kept burning. Not in defeat. In fury. Below, in a desert bunker powered by scavenged solar panels, humans stood around a table built from scrap metal. A projector lit up, showing the interior design of an alien base. A former power node, heavily protected. Nearly impossible. To reach, one of them asked, why not hit something easier? The woman leading the briefing answered without hesitation, because they think this one's safe. She looked around the room. Farmers, teachers, miners, even a former thief. Not one of them had ever worn a uniform. But every single one was ready to die. Thought the plan wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. It just needed to make them bleed. And when they hit the node through fire, through smoke, through walls, they didn't stop until the lights in the alien sky flickered. For the first time, the ship suggested course, not to attack. To retreat. Small, subtle, almost nothing. But the resistance saw it, tracked it, recorded it, and the message went out, bouncing through the underground channels, echoing through every dark tunnel and ruined home. They're scared. The survivors didn't celebrate. They sharpened their blades. They loaded their tools. They cleaned their wounds, because fear wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And somewhere in the deep cold of space, one of the alien high command officers stared at the earth and spoke words it had never used before. We underestimated their will. No, said another. We underestimated their memory. And far below, in the ruins of a school gym where a girl once painted symbols on a wall, a new drawing appeared overnight. It wasn't written in charcoal. It was carved in stone. A human hand reaching up, grabbing a chain, and pulling it down from the sky. The war was no longer about survival. It was about taking back the stars. Asterisk. The wind screamed over a frozen landscape where cities once stood tall, metal towers torn in half, streets cracked open like broken bones. Nothing moved except for the blinking red eyes of drones scanning the dead silence. But even those machines were slower now. Some flickered, some shook, some hovered uncertainly, like they no longer trusted the sky they owned. Deep underground, beneath layers of ruined concrete, a chamber pulsed with life. Not with lights or music, but with something older, heartbeat, breath. Fury. It was no longer just a resistance camp. It was a war council. Map stretched across walls, burned and torn, but updated constantly. Dots marked places where humans had won tiny victories, but spreading. Symbols showed where machines had fallen. X's scratched into steel where alien officers had been taken. The humans didn't always kill their prisoners anymore. They needed them to listen. Because now the humans had something more powerful than bombs. They had a story, a message that traveled not just through wires and whispers, but through fear. The aliens had cracked the earth in 3 days, but now, day by day, Earth was cracking them back. A courier burst through the steel doors, out of breath, pale from the cold. He held a dented datapad made from a scavenged alien interface. People gathered around as he spoke, voice shaking not from fear, but from excitement. We have it, they stared. He nodded. A full layout, one of their command cores. Power. Lines, defense cycles, communication nodes, everything. No one spoke for several seconds. Then, slowly, one man whispered, "Where?" The courier looked around and then said the name the entire room had hoped for, feared for, dreamt of. The Sky Fortress. Silence fell like a bomb. The Sky Fortress was the brain. The oldest ship. The one that arrived first. It had never left Earth's orbit, never opened its doors. It controlled the entire grid. It was their heart, their eye, their god. And now it had a hole, not a large one, not a weakness they could stroll through, but a path, a cracked dot. It was enough. They began preparing immediately. No sleep, no arguments. They knew what this meant. It meant this war was no longer defensive. It meant they were no longer survivors. They were the storm. All over Earth. A new signal was broadcast through underground networks. It wasn't words. It wasn't even sound. It was a rhythm. A beat. 3 pulses. Pause. 1 long tone. Repeat. It was the signal to rise. Humans in every broken zone stood taller. They looked up, even when the sky was filled with black clouds and metal monsters. They gripped their tools, sharpened their blades, checked the explosives taped to their arms, their legs, their chests. No one expected to survive. No one needed to. All they needed was a window. Above. The Sky Fortress detected unusual movements, too many power spikes, too many noise patterns. It deployed more patrols, scanned deeper, strengthened firewall layers, recalibrated threat maps, but it didn't see the truth. The threat wasn't outside anymore, it was inside, one of their own. Scientists had gone dark weeks ago. Last seen working in a genetics lab analyzing human behavior. The alien had vanished after exposure to captured human broadcasts, old recordings of riots, revolutions, last stands. Somewhere in those echoes, something had changed. Now, that same alien stood inside the ship, wearing the same smooth armor, walking the same cold halls, but hiding one tiny thing, no. Scanner could detect ... and doubt was all the humans needed. The plan began with a fake riot in a dead city, fires, explosions, dozens of survivors screaming nonsense through old radios. A performance, carefully crafted. The machines fell for it. They pulled reinforcements from key zones, including one beneath the fortress. The resistance team used a deactivated tunnel buried under a frozen lake. They crawled through ice, filth, and radiation. Their bones froze. One died along the way. The others left him in silence and pushed forward. Then they reached the underside of the Sky Fortress. A metal forest of cables, ports, antennae. Unbreakable from the outside, but from the inside, the alien defector opened a hatch no human could find. The fighters climbed in. 12 of them. They didn't speak. They only moved through tunnels that had never known footsteps, past machines that had never known fear. Straight toward the command core. They knew it wasn't enough to destroy the ship. They needed to speak through it, send a message not just to Earth, but to the entire galaxy. Because if Earth could fight back, if Earth could resist and wound, the giants, maybe other worlds could too. The team reached the core. There were no guards, only silence, and in that silence, they planted the virus. Not digital, not machine. It was a memory. Footage from Earth's last 3 months. The fires, the resistance, the song sung by children in hiding, the last words of dying fighters, the screams, the laughter, the hope. The virus spread through the fortress, faster than code. Screens across the ship blinked, then glowed, then screamed. Images of human resistance burned across every terminal. Every alien on board saw it. Some turned away. Some collapsed. Some stared, frozen. And far below, humans looked up and saw something they never thought they would. The Sky Fortress was on fire, and it was falling. Asterisk.